Good morning. Welcome. My name is Katrina Hunter, and I help people live happier lives through the practice of yoga and sound energy healing. I am a sound energy healing practitioner, a registered nurse as well, and I own and operate a studio here in Friendswood, Texas. And I love all things spiritual and metaphysical. So, with that said, today I will be having a conversation with my good friend, Susanna Massari. She is a psychic medium, death doula, and author of Living Beyond Death. And there are many myths concerning this time of year. So, being that it's Halloween, there's a lot of superstitions and you know, like people talk about the spirits and death and the afterlife, and ooh, it's pretty spooky. So we thought that it was a great time to talk about the death and dying, the process. And I guess my first question, first of all, welcome, Susanna.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to
Um,
see you.
Good to see you too. The first question that I have for you, if you would explain for our audience, what is a death doula?
Well, the name doula is an ancient Greek word basically meaning slave. And back in ancient Greece, there were women that were part of the household that helped the woman of the house during her pregnancy, during birth, and then after birth. And in the 1960s, I think the birth doulas, I think that's when birth doulas began to be popular here in the United States. And then maybe, oh gosh, I'm guessing maybe 10, 20 years ago, that death doulas or end of life doulas started to appear and helping people through the death process and helping families and helping people who are terminal plan and prepare for their deaths. And so when I heard about it, and this was back in 2016, 2017, and I took a course and I was certified. It took me a year to get certified. And that's when I began my practice and volunteer work at local non uh, uh, at hospice, a nonprofit. And in our area, we have several that are profit and a few that are nonprofit. And I did my requirements through the company that I got my certification through. And so I did my requirements by sitting vigil with people in hospice, mostly Alzheimer's patients. And then I just stayed on, and I was a visiting volunteer and a vigil volunteer. And so I did that. I was with hospice for about 4 years, and then COVID hit the scene, and we couldn't volunteer any longer. And that's when I started writing my book. And so I have not returned to volunteering at hospice, but I do consultation work. I do not actually do vigils anymore or actively help um, families and the dying person through the process. I just consult and starting a second book. And so that's kind of where we are. It was something it was a passion. And being a medium, I've been publicly doing readings for people, their private readings, for over 20 years. And even though my psychic experiences started when I was 9. And so where I am today with my abilities has taken a lifetime to develop. And so by doing private readings for people, I was wondering when I heard about doula work, I was wondering how would that be to have the honor of sitting with someone and while they're taking their last breaths of life and how would that correspond to my mediumship? And what would I see? And anyone who has worked with hospice and the dying knows very well there's a lot of strange things that happen. And a lot of people who don't believe in psychic experiences or metaphysics or anything or mediums or anything like that have experiences, extraordinary experiences. And so people who have actually sat with the dying, they know something more is going on. And people talk, they talk to deceased relatives. I can feel people in the room with them. I can sense when they are out of body, they go back in body, in and out. So it's been quite an experience. It's been an extreme honor for me to sit with people who, I'm on the last page of their book of life.
Wow. I think that's absolutely amazing. The process and sitting with someone who's dying and the experiences that the family would have or friends would have being around them, and especially with you
Mhm.
being a medium. I am excited to delve into some of those experiences if you don't mind sharing.
No. And this is a good time of year because we have Halloween coming up, and you know that there are myths about the veil being thin, and it's a good time of year for spirits to come through, and you have to protect yourself and watch out. I don't believe in any of that. To me, there is no veil. When we cross over, as people call it, we're really not crossing over. We're just moving from one dimension into another. And it's as simple as that. I mean, it's just really simple. There, the veil, it's a myth that has been practiced and preached and passed on, for generations. And for me, it's not true. But that's my belief.
Well, are you saying that there is a continuance
Oh yeah.
when the
Hmm.
dying process is completed in this dimension? There's a
Hmm.
continuum in another dimension.
Oh yeah, we survive. Consciousness survives.
Mm,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. I
Wow.
wouldn't be I wouldn't be a medium if it didn't.
Well, talk about, being that it's Halloween, let's talk about some of these superstitions, some of
Okay.
these beliefs that people currently hold, and
Hmm.
some of
Hmm.
these beliefs that were held in the past. Can you name some of those?
Oh, I have a whole list.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's from the book. It's from the book.
Okay.
Um some of them are kind of funny. Uh so let's see. Okay, people turn pictures face down to keep the living from being possessed by the spirit of the dead person. Uh, white gloves for pallbearers to keep the spirit of the dead person from entering the pallbearer's body through the hands. Oh, cover your mouth. Make sure you don't yawn because if you yawn, it's to keep the spirit of the deceased from entering your body by the mouth.
Oh, it's okay. That's an
All
interesting.
right. All right. Tapophobia, um, and the graveyard shift. Now, tapophobia is a fear of being buried alive, which happened a lot in the 19th century. And so when people were buried, they would be buried with a string that went into the coffin, and then there would be a bell attached outside of the coffin or on the gravestone. So if they happen to wake up and they're buried, they can pull the string and the bell would ring. And so they would have people sit by the grave during the night in case they rang the bell. Hence, we got the word graveyard shift.
Wow, that's where that came from.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So buried alive, of course, not on purpose. They thought
No, no,
they did.
yeah, yeah. It was a thing back then,
Wow.
that their bodily functions, whatever was going on with them, uh, gave the appearance of being death, and the ways that they, I guess, decided somebody was dead, wasn't always correct.
Okay, correct. Right. Oh, interesting.
Let's see, we did the yawning, covering the deceased, covering the body with a sheet would keep the soul from leaving the body while also protecting the living from being possessed. And don't whistle in a cemetery because it will summon the devil.
Oh,
Don't ever whistle in the graveyard. Um, and I think I told you one about paying your bill.
yes.
Um, Someone started this superstition, I'm sure it was the funeral industry, started the superstition that the dead will not rest until the funeral bill is paid.
I'm gonna have to tell my brother about that one. He's a funeral home director.
And then you have the gun salutes, church bells, throwing spears in the air. A good reference for this would be Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book about death and dying, and she has a section in there about that. Uh, so those are some of the superstitions, and the other ones are mirrors and windows. You cover mirrors so you won't be sucked into the mirror by a spirit. And the windows, it started out the windows to be closed so the spirit wouldn't leave the window and get lost. And then it turned to where you need to open the window so the spirit can leave, or leave the door open so the spirit can go out the door. Now, as I was sitting vigil for this gentleman, and I had relieved his son so the son could go to lunch, and I was sitting there with the man, and I was telling him, your wife is gone for the weekend, and he was in an unconscious state, but they still hear us. I was telling him that his wife was out of the state or out of the country going to another family funeral, and that she would be back on Monday. And this was on a Friday. I think it was on a Friday. And that his son had just left to go for lunch. And I had the hospice nurse had just been in, and the CNA, and he had been bathed. They gave him a bed bath, changed his clothes, combed his hair, shaved him, and changed his sheets. And so he was very comfortable. And I was sitting there with him and just telling him everything was going to be okay, and that I was there with him until his son got back from lunch. And it was like almost not even a minute after I told him his son had gone and would be back shortly that he went into the actual last minutes of his life where he was rapid breathing and everything was just shutting down. And a lot of people like to die alone or die without their family there because they don't want to put their family through the trauma of their death. And so a lot of people, and people don't believe that we have that much control over our death, but we really do. People believe that, it's God's will and God will make the decision when that person goes. I don't agree with that, and that's okay. That's just my opinion. And I like to explain to people that, let's say you are in your home, and this is all metaphoric. You're in your home and you call a car service to come to your home to take you to the airport. And you have all of your bags packed and you're waiting at the door for the car service to show up. It is up to you to open that door and leave your home to get into the car to go to the airport to whatever destination you're headed for. And you also have to realize that we always have free will. We are never without free will, even when our body dies and we cross into spirit form, non-physical form. We always have free will. So I was sitting with this gentleman and he was going through the dying process. He took his last breath and I told him, good job. And I was sitting there with him, just sitting. And I had contacted the hospice nurse who was in the nursing home. And I was waiting for her to come to declare time of death. And I was just watching him. I was just looking at him and still holding his hand. And I felt this really strong presence behind me. And I thought it was the hospice nurse. And so I turned around, but there he was. He was walking out of the door, and the door was closed, but he was walking out of the door. He walked through the door and he went on. And what I like to um, impress upon people is that when you leave your body, you are already in a different dimension of this reality. And our physical reality, the physicalness, no longer applies to the person who has just passed.
So you saw him psychically walk through the door.
I had a vision of him. He gave,
Oh,
yeah,
he gave
he
you that.
he gave me the vision of him walking out the door. And he was very nicely dressed. It looked like, if I can remember correctly, he had on this plaid shirt and maybe blue jeans or khaki pants. And he was just walking out. He was already in the dimension that he wanted to be in. And I'll explain that in a minute. He, and this is where we get myths like, you need to open the window for the
Right.
spirit to leave, or
Mhm.
you need to open the door. That our physicalness no longer applies to them. They're not here anymore. They're not in this dimension anymore, this three-dimensional dimension. They're not here anymore. And so it doesn't matter whether you open the window or open the door, they're going to be walking on to wherever they need to go or wherever they want to go.
Wow.
And, and if you're wondering, where do we go or what do we do? Remember, number one, you're in spirit form. Number two, you have free will. And number three, you take your personality along with you. You still hold on to your personality that you've had here for a time
Mhm.
until you decide to let that personality go and create a new identity. So we can go or create whatever we need to create. So if you're deeply religious, you can create heaven, Jesus, angels, God. I had a reading with a woman. Her husband was an atheist, and this was the third reading I had done for her. And it was at a psychic fair. I did this psychic fair 3 times, and she was there all 3 times. And so the last time she was concerned that her husband was stuck because he was an atheist and he died of alcoholism. And he had come through
Can I
in,
interrupt
sure,
for
go
one?
ahead.
That is one of the beliefs in current reality here.
Hmm.
People get stuck.
Yeah.
So that's not true.
There may now for them, and think of your dream state, because when you're in this dream state, there's no time. That's the way it is when in non-physical form, in spirit form. There is no time. So there are some people who may be confused as to what's happened to them, like an atheist could be confused about what happened to them. It, our time, it could be like 10 years. To them, it could be 10 seconds.
Mhm.
So we can't judge on how long we think someone is stuck based on our time. It doesn't work because there is no time where they are. Um, and there's people there. There's always help. There's always someone around to help a person adjust. And so people have this myth that if you die a traumatic death or you die a sudden death, that you're shocked and you don't know where you are and you could be stuck. Um, the confusion is temporary, very temporary. And like I said, there are people around to help, the person adjust.
Okay.
So, when her husband came through for the third time to say that he was okay, he explained to me, and then I explained to her that being an atheist, when he died, he thought he was going to be nothing, that he was not going to exist any longer. And so he was in momentarily for him, it may have been 3 years for her, but he was momentarily in nothingness. And when we think of nothingness, most of the time we'll think that it's a dark place, but he was in nothingness and thinking that um, he wasn't going to be alive. He would just be annihilated. And then when he realized he was still alive, it was like everything changed for him. His whole reality changed. And he was able to realize, and it was just that moment, where he realized that, oh, hey, wait a minute, I'm still alive, that everything opened up. He woke up, that everything had changed for him, and that he was okay. And there were things that he was doing on the other side. I can't remember what he was doing. Um, but he was happy and healthy, and he had let go of the issues that he had with alcoholism and all the negative things, and that she shouldn't worry anymore.
And this was your third session with her.
Third session with her.
He shared this.
And and they are the ones in control when they come through for a reading. I'm just the vessel. I, I have no control over who comes through or what they have to say. I'm just the vessel. And they decide how the reading is going to go. And they decide on the symbols that they give me. Now, there's some symbols that I insist on. Well, there's one thing that I insist on, that if you're on from the mother's side, you come in on my right side. If you're from the father's side, you come in on the left side. Um, the symbol of money, change, uh, is symbolic of change in their life. So if there's a handful of pennies, there's a lot of small changes that are going to happen for them. If there's one large, like silver dollar that they either have had or they are going to have a major change in their life, a life-changing situation. And so those are really the only two that I kind of depend on and ask for. A lot of mediums have symbols that they use for all kinds of things. I leave it up to the people in spirit to give them to me in a way that I will understand and I can interpret.
I see.
Because if I structure myself and
Mm,
say, okay, you know, white roses mean death. This means that. Uh, this, and this means this, and this. That
oh,
that locks them
mhm.
into what I want. I just say, have at it, you know. Just give me what you've got
Right,
and let myself be free and let them be free, and we'll get it all figured out. And so that's kind of how things work for
okay,
me. Every
right,
medium's different. Every medium
right.
is different.
Okay, I understand. I've had readings with you that were profound and very rewarding for
Good.
me, and I want to thank you for those.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask about the benefit of being a death doula. Why would a person, of course, it's obvious support to the family, but what are some of the reasons why a person would hire a death doula?
It's it helps the family navigate
Mhm.
through the dying process. And when someone has a terminal illness, everything shifts for everyone. And if you are a caretaker of someone who is dying, that is a lot. And so a doula can be there to give a person respite. They can go off and go shopping or take the afternoon off or whatever, or have a schedule of when the doula is going to come and visit. They can, if the person dying doesn't want to talk to their family about what they want, they can first discuss it with the doula. The doula can help with the vigil planning on what happens when they transition and they go into an unconscious state. And the doula can be there to make sure that their wishes are, um, people listen to their wishes, because sometimes families freak out and want to do things their way, and there can be conflicts. So if the person dying has everything written down on how they want things to unfold, the doula can be their advocate.
Oh, okay.
They can help the person do advanced care planning, um, where every step of the process when they start to transition is taken care of. You're still being the advocate for the dying person. You can you can help them do the vigil planning. You can help them do the advanced care planning. You can help them with a legacy project, whether that is a photo album, blanket, something to be remembered by. The
Mhm.
doula can help with that. The doula can be a go-between between the family and the doctors and nurses.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so there's a lot of advantages. The doula can be there to take care of calling the funeral home or whomever needs to be called after they pass. so the family doesn't have to take care of it
Mhm.
because everybody's going to be like in crazy mode.
Right, of course.
And you want to be prepared, especially with advanced care planning. You want to be everybody over the age of 18 needs to be prepared for and have it written down as to what they want to happen to their body if they can't speak for themselves.
Hmm.
You know, you might have an accident. Um, anything can happen.
Right.
Anything can happen. And so you want to be prepared, and it's important to have a will. It's important to have a living will and everything mapped out,
Hmm.
so you can have you and your family can have an easier time of taking care of things that need to be taken care of. And the dying person may confide in the doula things that they would not confide with their
Yeah,
family.
right.
They may need to get some things off their chest, or have advice about connecting with someone that they no longer speak to and they just want to say goodbye.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
Those are major benefits. And it sounds like it would be a huge relief for the
Mm.
family,
Hmm.
friends taking care of the dying person.
Yeah.
And of course, the dying person, the support.
Right.
Would you mind giving us a few examples, or not examples, but experiences of what you have had while sitting? I know you've given,
Mm-hmm.
can you give a couple more of those?
Sure, sure. But before I do that, I want to also mention that hospice can do all of that also. A hospice can help you with advanced care planning. They can have everything written down for you. They have vigil volunteers, and it doesn't cost anything. That is a service of hospice. So if you're planning or have a family member that's going to be put on hospice, you can have volunteers, visiting volunteers. You can request a vigil volunteer. You can request that somebody fill out advanced care planning uh, packet. And all of that hospice can do. But a
Oh,
lot of times people feel that they need a doula, an outside source. So, uh, so the experiences, my very first vigil, was a woman that I had only paid a visit to twice, and she was very, very frail woman. She was extremely thin, and her legs were starting to contort in her arms, and her hair was very thin and very gaunt looking, and so I went in to visit her, and I just sat on the side of the bed, and she was lying down, and I was talking to her, and she kept kissing my hand, and I was just so touched. And then when I left, she was blowing me kisses, and I had gone in to visit her again, and same thing happened. She kept kissing my hand and blowing me kisses, and I blew kisses back, and just a very gentle and kind woman. And I was called in to sit vigil. Her daughter-in-law was there. And so I had a chance to talk to her daughter-in-law. And I think I was there maybe about 4 hours, I think it was. And her daughter-in-law was sitting on one side of the bed, and I was on the other side of the bed. And we were just talking about her and having a conversation about her. And I found out that she was deaf. And she wasn't born that way. She had become that way. And she was not, she had jobs that paid minimum wage, and she had one son, And he was an adult, obviously. She was an older woman. And she didn't want to pay for hearing aids. At the time, Medicare didn't pay for that or Medicaid. And she didn't want to pay for hearing aids, so she learned to read lips. So both times that I sat with her, she was reading my lips. And her daughter-in-law and I were talking and talking, um, and I kept s- seeing her and feeling her. She would be standing next to the bed, next to her body, and then she would be back in, and then she'd be out, and then she'd be back in, and then she'd be out. And when she was doing that, the feeling that I was getting was that she was practicing. She was practicing being out of body, practicing not having a body. And so she spent a couple of hours doing that, going in and out, in and out. And I kept seeing her by the bed, back, then I wouldn't see her and she'd be back there again. And uh, when she when she took her final breath, she took me with her, and through vision, she took me with her as she left her body and what we call crossing over. And I was I was like on the edge of this huge, huge, beautiful field of yellow flowers of all different types. Some that we would recognize in this reality, some that didn't look like they were from this reality. And there was woods and forests on either side and mountains in the background. And I felt her father way, way, way off in the distance. And she was reverted to being 12 years old. And she was in a pair of shorts, and she had long, beautiful hair. And she was running through this field of flowers. Now, when she was running through the field of flowers, she was not making a path. She was not disturbing the flowers at all. And she reverted to the age of 12 because at that age, we don't have responsibility. We don't have that much responsibility in life. So she reverted back to an age where she had no responsibility. She had a lifetime of responsibility. She had beautiful hair, where now it was thin and gray. And she was in perfect health. And she had a lot of health problems, and she had problems with her knees, which prevented her from running, which I can relate to. I couldn't run to save my life. Yeah. But so she was running toward her father. And what struck me and what continues to strike me, because it was such a profound experience, this woman was so kind and so generous that me, basically a stranger, she took me on her journey of crossing over. She was that generous and that kind. And when I think about her, I get really emotional and so honored that she did that. And that is called a shared crossing. A shared crossing. Dr. Raymond Moody, who was the one that coined the term near-death experience. Personally, I call it a death experience because a person actually dies and comes back. So it's not near death, but he coined that phrase. We use that and people identify with that. And he also coined the term shared crossing. And there's a website that people can go. It's called the Shared Crossing project. I haven't checked their website lately, so I don't know if they still have project up or not. But they they have a they came out with a book of people's experiences of shared crossings. Now, that's a shared crossing. Now, my experience is that I usually feel people in the room with the person that's passing. I can feel, two, three, five, waiting for this person. Um, Other people have had other experiences with the dying where they can see them leave their body, or their essence, their soul, passes through them. It feels like they pass through them. They don't actually pass through them. That's the energy of the person. It kind of feels like they're passing through. Um, and there's so many different experiences that people can have with a dying person. I'm actually feeling somebody here in the room. I'm not sure who it is. Wow. Um, this is the father of that woman who just came through. Um, and he's saying, thank you for remembering my daughter. It- he's saying, this is the legacy that she wanted to leave, and that she was so deeply connected to this life and human beings, that phew, this is something that she could leave behind for people to understand life in another way. And so he's thanking me, he's thanking you, he's thanking everyone that is viewing this.
Thank you.
That's how things work.
Yes, because actually it's a great segue into your mediumship ability and how it helps your clients when they make or contact you for sessions.
This is what I do is, if I were to call myself anything other than a medium, it would be an emotional healer.
Mhm.
And now, as you know, that anyone who calls themselves a healer is not actually, they don't actually heal.
Yes, correct.
They, like with you during doing energy work, you set up the situation and use energy for that person, or their body, to use that energy in the way the body feels that it should.
That is correct.
Do you have another way of explaining that, or saying it in a different way?
Well, basically, what you said, I create a space and where, like you, I am a vessel for energy to come through. And energy, as you know, cannot be controlled
Right.
or directed. Energy has an intelligence of its own.
Hmm.
And so I share energy with my client. My client uses that energy as my client sees best. Also, without controlling, without manipulating, because the client is encouraged to relax, let go, and allow the energy to work.
Right.
So yes, that was a good explanation.
So what my readings do for people, because um, I consider my readings soul readings, because the people that come through for, and we also call, sometimes client sounds a little cold. The sitter, that also sounds a little cold. And I don't mean any disrespect by calling someone a client. That uh, I am a vessel. The information that comes through, because people in spirit understand that I use my emotions, I use that state, I use that energy. And a lot of times the information comes through that is uh, very deep. Now, you ask me for names, dates, where's the will, where are the car keys? I don't know. Don't ask me that. Don't ask me, when am I going to find the love of my life? I don't know. When do you want to find the love of your life?
Right, yeah.
So this what I do is entirely on an emotional level. And
It was very healing to
it,
people.
it is, and it's not me giving the information. It's people in spirit who are connecting with my consciousness, and so they use my consciousness. Our consciousness kind of blends for that period of time, and they come through with why the family dynamics are the way that they are. I just did a reading for a woman, and her grandmother was giving her information on why she had a fear of death. I had no idea this woman had a fear of death,
Mhm.
and why she had the fear of death, and what happened to her in her childhood that created that belief. So it's things like that. It goes on a very deep level. And I wouldn't have it any other way. There are times, and this, I don't remember, because after a reading, I rarely remember what's going on. I remember bits and pieces. But sometimes the information that comes through is so intense that I end up in tears. I end up crying, and people at the end say, "Oh, I'm so sorry you had to go through that." I was like, "No, no, 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 that's fine. That's part of the process, and
Yeah,
I don't hold on to any of that.
right.
You
Yes.
know, that's not my stuff. I don't hold on to any of that." And so, it just is what it is.
Mhm.
And I don't need to. Now, here's another thing that I don't do that a lot of mediums do. A lot of people think they need to do this. After a reading, I don't shut that energy off. If I'm open, then I like to stay that way, because it gives me the opportunity of having more experiences. And I talk about my experience at that big superstore that everybody goes to.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And my husband Tom, Tom is a channel. He's been a channel for 52 years, something like that. And so he was in the pharmacy and I took the cart and, just walked to the side so I wasn't in people's way. And this was right after a reading. And this was right after a reading where St. Francis had come through for a woman who was a devout Catholic. And that's another whole story in itself. Um, but I was still open. We were there in the store. And while Tom was in the pharmacy, I started seeing people in their true form, in their true essence. And so it was like this transparent energy around them. It wasn't white, it was translucent, but it was not even white, kind of whitish, I don't know. It was not the person's aura. That's from the electromagnetic field that our body gives off. It wasn't that. This was them in their true form. I saw everyone in their true form. Everyone looked like they had just come from the barber shop or the beauty salon. Everyone, there were no wrinkles. No one had wrinkles, no matter how old they were. And these were mostly older folks that I was seeing. And everyone was, I guess the best way to describe it would be fulfilled. I felt no jealousy within them, no any of the negative emotions that we have here in physical form. Um, Everyone was fulfilled. Everyone had confidence, and everyone was beautiful. They were
Oh,
extremely beautiful, and it was like, I was seeing their soul. And I'm here to tell you people that you are not everything that you're more than what you think you are. You're much more than what you think you are. And you're,
being
huh?
open, benefit of staying open.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have had that experience if I hadn't stayed open.
right.
I'm not gonna do all that stuff. I'm not gonna block myself, stop this, protect myself, I am my own protection.
Mm,
I am because I know who I am. I'm confident in what I do. I'm very good at being a medium. It's uh, a very large part of my identity, and it's my way of helping humanity and doing my part and letting people know that it's all about love. We don't know that because not many of us have experienced unconditional love and pure peace. I have felt that under a couple of occasions, and people in spirit have shown me things.
mhm.
We are far more than what we think we are, far more. And when you have experiences like that, when you have transformational experiences, when you see people as they really are, and not all of this, basically an illusion of what we've created as
Right.
reality,
Understood.
you know,
Mhm,
and all the garbage that goes on, and all the fighting, and all of the emotions that, people have no command over. It, you see people in a different way,
mhm,
you know, and I can tell you that everyone walking this earth, no matter how vile they are or saintly they are, they have people in spirit that are around them. And people in spirit know how we treat one another. So when you are kind to someone, it's seen. When you're not kind to someone, it is seen by someone in non-physical form. Um, can I tell you another, real quick, another little story?
Absolutely, I would love it.
I'm retired with FedEx, and after I came in off the road, I was in the truck for 17 years. And when I came into the office, and I was working the front counter, and there was a woman that was coming in every few weeks, who was sending a care package to her daughter in Hawaii who was dying of breast cancer. And I would always help her with her paperwork. And it was just part of what I did. We weren't supposed to help people with their paperwork because the shipping person takes full responsibility for how they fill out the paperwork. But I helped her with all of this, and I helped her get her package together and so forth. And we would talk, and she came in, and I said, "No, no care package?" And she said, "No, my daughter passed away." And I said, "I'm so sorry." And she had some papers that she needed to overnight. And so we got all of everything, situated and paperwork filled out and so forth. And her daughter came through, and her daughter was wearing, one of those stiff nursing hats, the white nursing hats. And she had told me that her daughter was a nurse. And so her daughter, when her daughter came through, all she said was, "Thank you for being kind to my mother." And then she was gone. So it it matters, when you're kind to someone, even if nobody sees what you're doing, you have an impact on that person. And you have an impact on that person's family or entourage or whatever you want to call it, of people in spirit. You
Right.
have an you have an impact on the entire universe,
So it extends far beyond
far beyond
reality.
just a kind word, just I hope you're having a great day. Whatever it is, when you take the time and you're kind to someone, it doesn't go unnoticed. People notice, and you don't have any idea how you're impacting another human being. And we're all, if you don't mind me saying it this way, we're all strung together.
Yeah, of
We're,
course.
we're all from the same thread,
Yes, yes.
you know? So, of course, we have bad days. Of course, we get pissed off. Of course, we get short with people, but and sometimes maybe they need that, you know?
It-
Uh,
It's all
ju-
part of the human experience.
right, 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 exactly.
Makes
But
sense.
just know that your presence here on earth, you do have an impact. Whether you don't feel like you have a purpose, um, or you're lost, or you feel broken, not only do you have a right to be here, you have a right to live out your particular plan and design for your own life. And even when you're struggling, you may be you may come into contact with people who need to have the experience with you,
Hmm.
and you need to have an experience with them. So it's all good. It's all good.
It's all working out
It
for the better good.
it all comes out in the wash.
Yes,
You know.
because we're all gonna die anyway.
I know. But we don't really die.
We don't really die. We continue.
Yeah, we do. We continue. We continue on and on and on and on because, this universe, it's all energy. I call it the whole of existence. Some people call it God, Allah, Creator, God, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same energy. It's
Okay,
life energy, and it is aware. It is consciousness.
beautiful. Well said, Susanna. I
Um,
appreciate every single second of this conversation with you.
I appreciate you too.
I think that it can help alleviate those watching, could help alleviate some of the fear surrounded around the death and dying process. Um, you have been amazing today, and I thank you
Thank
for that.
you. Thank you. Just one last thought
Mhm.
that uh, death itself is not painful.
Ah,
Your body may be in pain, but death itself is not a painful experience.
oh, can you elaborate just a little bit more on that?
No.
Ah, okay. So then
No,
just
no.
a
When,
person can feel the pain of the body, but
yes.
they don't feel emotional pain when they're dying. I guess that's my question.
Oh, no. Of course, that's up to the individual. I really have no right to say what they're feeling. I do have a story in the book. Oh, excuse me, that's a chair. Um, I do have a story. It's called Stella's World View,
Mhm.
and it's a woman that I had only went to visit one time, uh, and I had a workshop to go to that weekend, so I couldn't come back and see her that weekend. But she looked like she was going to make it through the weekend. She was still eating and drinking, sort of. She was still able to swallow. Um, and she was when I went in to see her uh, for I don't know, probably a month, she was like, ay, 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 24 hours a day, except for times when they gave her medication to sleep, according to the hospice nurse. And I went in and she was doing that, I. And I tried playing music and, she'd get upset and I turned that off. And I just was listening to her. And it was like an in-between space. And I heard her say, I want water. I want water. I want water. And so I got her water. She drank water and she went back to that. And I'm listening to her. And she said, I want to die. I want to die. I want to die. And nobody had been listening to her
Mm.
because it just sounded like she was just yelling out. And and I told her it would be soon, that she didn't have anything to worry about. She was doing a great job. She came back and said that during that time that she was, and she showed up maybe a week later, 4 days later, a week later. And when Tom and I were in the kitchen one morning, and I told him, I said, go get the recorder because I think this is going to be long. And she gave me about 20 minutes of information.
Oh,
And part of that information was that her process, that yelling out was part of her dying process. That's what she used to do her life review. Now we don't have to do a life review.
Mm,
Most people do. From my understanding from spirit, is that not everybody needs to do it.
mm,
So she was telling me that she spent that time um, going through her life. She was doing her life review because when she crossed over, she didn't want to have to do it. She wanted to get on with business wherever she was going, and she was teaching. Excuse me, she was going to be teaching in some dimension. Uh, so there's 20 minutes of information on her worldview. So I forgot where we were going with this. Um, oh,
um,
pain. So she might have been feeling physical pain, emotional pain. She may have been feeling emotional pain. I don't know, but with the information that she was doing her own life review, she may have been recalling things that were painful to her emotionally. I don't know. I don't
mm,
know. I'm not privy to that,
okay.
but yes, people do feel emotional pain.
Hmm.
They do feel physical pain. Some do, some don't. Um, excuse me, there was a woman who tried crawling out of her bed all day. And the information that I got, excuse me, I need to take a sip. The information that I got after her death was that she had a belief that you were supposed to fight death, which is why she was trying to crawl out of her bed all day.
Oh,
So, but death itself, when the body goes through, now here's another thing, is that energy workers, they come in, um, I don't know if, at the request of the dying person or the request of the family, and they do energy work and work on the chakras and everything. Just the body will take that energy and use it however the body needs to use it. The energy practitioner is just be a vehicle for energy. They don't have, um, people can't move things around or pull things out or, you know, make a chakra, one of the seven chakras, move faster or slow down. The body does that. We, it's in our DNA, it's in our genes. The body knows how to die. We've been doing it for thousands of years. The body knows what it's doing, and it'll shut down the way that particular person and body, because everything is consciousness. All of the organs have its own consciousness, everything. And the body does what it needs to do, and it will use that energy
as
in
it.
whatever way it feels it needs to. The energy practitioner, it just makes, and I'm going to step on lots of toes here, I'm sure. Um, it's the intention that I think people get hung up on and on what they're able to do. Um, because a lot of energy workers are invested in being able to have control over the body.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying,
I
right?
do. I do. I understand what you're saying.
So, anyway,
This was amazing.
yeah, it was fun. That
It
was
was fun.
great.
So thank you for your.
Great. I,
I I would like to express that anyone in that comes to the studio to do yoga or sound energy healing, I do have Sue's book available to purchase if you would like. Um, so I wanted to put that little tidbit out there.
Thank you. It can also be found on Amazon,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kindle, and 22 other platforms. So if you Barnes and Noble, whatever, it's out there.
Very nice.
It's out there. And it's not a book that you need to read from cover to cover. You can pick out certain chapters to read first. It doesn't matter because each chapter is its own entity,
Yes.
basically.
Actually, that's how I've been reading it. And I mean, sometimes I just open it and find, and I just read that.
I do
It's
too. I
a
do too.
wealth of information in this book. When I do open it and just read it, I trust that's what I need to hear for the moment. But it's a very in-depth book. I even one of the chapters here is finding consciousness.
Hmm.
Um, animals. You have a chapter here on animals.
It's my favorite chapter is animals,
Yes.
along with dreams, dimensions, and imagination.
Right, right. So this is a wealth. I don't know if you all can see these titles here, but the book is amazing. And it's my go-to book every time I travel, besides Abram's book. I just want to just encourage people to purchase her book. And how can you be contacted just in case somebody would like to like have a session with you, a mediumship session with you, or have
My
death doula work? How can you be contacted?
my website is www.mediumunplugged.com. My email address is Sue, Sue, at mediumunplugged.com.
Awesome. Thank you for all this wealth of information. It's really appreciated. Um, I will say so long for now
Okay.
again. Um, and sayonara. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for hanging in there and watching this.